It's great to be here. It's been such an amazing couple of days with some more inspiring sessions to come, but it's just been incredible to chat with so many incredible customers and community members and agencies on some of the incredible work that you're all doing. My name is Simran Dugal. I'm a director of sales here at Webflow, and it is my absolute pleasure to be up here with one of our esteemed customers today, Brendan Goldoni from Wiley. To talk about the lessons that he's learned over his 20-plus year career as a technology leader. And my hope is that you can take one tactical lesson away and apply it within your organizations. So before we get too far, and Brendan, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in your own words.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be here, Webflow. Like everyone said, I'm Brendan Goldoni. I'm head of digital commerce platforms for Wiley. Wiley is a 200-year-old book publisher. I guarantee probably everybody has at least one of our books throughout your lifetime. If you don't have one of our academic books, we also own dummies.com, which we'll be talking about today in this session. I just am happy to be here and interested to see what we can do with Webflow.
So are we. A fun fact is that it's Brendan's and his wife's 25th wedding anniversary tomorrow.
Yep.
So I met her earlier this week. She's just wonderful, and they're heading to Paris to celebrate. So we could probably talk more about those lessons another time, but for now, we'll stick to being a technology leader. Brendan, I'd love to sort of set the stage. Like I said, you've been sort of leading teams for the last 20 or so years. There's been a lot of evolution from a tech stack perspective, sort of at large, but also within the CMS landscape. Would love to just start there. What does that evolution look like for you in your career, but also at Wiley?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, think about it when, it was 25 years ago when the internet was somewhat born. We used to write websites by hand. Then we got into these things called CMSs. WordPress was born, did a lot of that. And then the next evolution after that was DXPs, which are just, different versions of WordPress, but more expensive. And then finally, we're getting into something that is bringing marketing and IT together. I'm in actually IT, even though I've grown up in CMO land and IT land. But the big thing of it is just how we've moved past all that and come to a point where people are actually collaborating. And then the collaboration actually starts when the two teams actually trust each other versus going around each other or trying to bring a solution together that doesn't work, and then you find out about it later because they want to launch this one thing, and they come to me and they can't do it because we didn't talk or collaborate. And I'm hoping to change that as we move forward.
What did even resourcing? I mean, whether they're marketers or developers, with that evolution, not only with CMS, but just again the tech stacks you've been exposed to. What did that look like historically? What is that starting to look like now?
Historically. Everybody came from, or I came from even where we built our own CMSs. Wiley is, like I said, a 200-year-old company, which means we have gone through just about everything. We even have our homegrown CMS is still running, that we're moving to new platforms. But then, of course, the marketing teams want to use something that's quote-unquote modern and moving forward, which gets us into these mega platforms, these DXPs, which are they seem sexy, but they really are very cumbersome. They take a lot of work from front-end engineers, back-end engineers, a lot of planning, a lot of procurement. And what I've seen, what my marketers want to do, and teams come to me, is saying, I can't get there fast enough, or can't we just try this, or can I just proof of concept something else? And when we do that and we have a win, it's great, but it's usually a one-time achievement, and to make it repeatable is really, really hard because there's not enough time in the day to explain how these things are so cumbersome and how they work or don't work together.
You mentioned earlier, I mean, you're an IT leader, you've grown up in marketing lands for parts of your career. Talk to me about the lens that's kind of brought you, and specifically from a tech perspective.
Yeah. So yes, I've been hired by CMOs and CTOs alike, and if I put my IT hat on, the thing I care about with any application is security and risk. I don't want to have my company gets sued or have something that happens that we're doing something wrong on our website or projecting the wrong thing. But then the CMO just says, hey, I just want to launch this video we just did, or hey, we have a campaign going out. Can I get a splash page? Or, it'd be really great to have a form. And, depending on how the system works, we might not have that. But at the end of the day, what they are looking for is something that is turnkey, something that they actually can do on their own with their own marketing teams without having to come to my team to say, hey, is that form connected to my marketing automation? Or how do I get that data from point A to point B? Because they need the data to run the website and run the business and to analyze what's actually going on.
How has that balanced your approach as a leader, having been a part of kind of both of those orgs over the years?
Well, I get excited when a marketer or somebody comes to me and wants to try something and has a new idea, because I was in their spot, 10 years ago, and just want to get something out the door and just be excited about it. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, we can do it one time, or we can't get the throughput we're looking for. And it's interesting to say, like, hey, can we try something? And usually the problem is when I'm confronted with a large platform, I'm up against procurement, finance, security, legal, all these things, versus what I call a modern platform is if I can go to something and sign up for it, a free account, maybe put a credit card down, and then eventually get to the enterprise. That to me is really testing it before we can actually jump in with both feet, because that's what my marketing hat tells me. Let's just try it out. But then if we try it out and if it wins, how do we then accelerate it? And then we have to go through that whole stack of departments just to get to something that's good.
Mm-hmm. You alluded it to a bit earlier. You talked about collaboration and trust. I'm curious, kind of as we start to narrow in on web development specifically, this collaboration between IT and marketing is not always easy. It can be challenging. You mentioned what a modern technology should look like from a purchasing standpoint, but what should the modern web development process look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen so many great designs from marketers and been pitched to say, look at how beautiful this is, and can we just make this work? And of course, in engineering, we're like, yes, we can do anything with the amount of time we have and an unlimited budget. But what it should look like, a website should be as easy as writing an email and hitting send. And if it gets harder than that, then we're losing out on all this technology we have, all the promises of cloud and AI. But if we can get to that point, then it's great, because I'd rather have my engineers focus on security, integration, worried about is it ADA compliant and things like that, versus having to make it pixel perfect. Because as an engineer, I'm colorblind, just to tell you guys up front. So when I was given a design, I couldn't tell what was what at some point in times, or I could not see what a drop shadow is. And I would produce something on time, and they're like, oh, it's not right. But given new tools, like I said, if it's as easy as writing an email, and they're the ones, putting their hands on the keyboard, and they like what they see, and if they can preview it and launch it, that's what modern development should be, in my opinion.
I love that. You mentioned Wiley is 200 years old. Yeah. I know you've certainly been a part of a modernization effort within the organization to continue to meet your customers in new, unique ways. Why was it so critical, or why is it so critical for you to invest in the right web platform today?
Yeah, so just to talk about Wiley's heritage and who we are as a company. At our core, we are a knowledge company. We love to learn. We're always constantly, learning new things and trying new things, which means, I always say it's a 200-year-old company, and we have 200 years of IT tech debt. And at one point in time, there wasn't anything to buy, so we would build it. And then eventually we would buy stuff, but then the thing that we built is now feeling like the thing that was purchased, because we've iterated on it so many years that it's, oh, we can't do that because we have to upgrade. I'm not going to meet this marketing deadline because there's a security issue. or something else and something else. And then what happens is we have a large ecosystem through our domains, and we stitch together many types of applications, but they just don't feel right from the customer journey. Everything's just a little bit off. I think we've all been there where we're going through a website and we go through the marketing and we love it and we're researching it and we go down that customer journey. And as soon as you get to e-commerce or search or add to bag, all of a sudden you're presented with something that doesn't feel like I'm in the same space. I mean, could you imagine like going to a grocery store and like I'm putting things in the bag and all of a sudden it feels like, I'm at the checkout of the gas station versus the grocery store. It just completely shifts the mindset and drives conversion down.
If we zoom out of technology for a second, is that a really core focus for Wiley today, is really unifying that customer experience?
Well, I think the marketing team, they want to stay on brand. Their big thing is what's the governance of that brand and how can I make the customer feel like we are one brand? My focus is to give them the tools without having to over-engineer things and allow them to publish when they want to publish and not have to wait for some sort of IT milestone or actually releasing software or, God forbid, we have to upgrade it, which is, in a SaaS world, waiting for software to be upgraded just doesn't make sense anymore. It should always be at version 0. We should always be at production all the time and releasing behind the scenes without affecting external customers or internal users.
As a Webflow customer, which is awesome, just for some context, there's some additional disparate systems being used at Wiley today. As it relates to those goals that marketing has, what do those challenges look like when there are these disparate systems from an IT perspective?
Yeah, so we started off with a journey like 3 years ago with a large DXP, and the whole idea was, okay, we're going to have one platform, and we're going to move towards that. And because we have 5,000 domains, about 200 active hosting sites on there, everybody has to wait in line. And there's teams that have been waiting for a long time to get things out the door and just want to, I have a budget. Can I do this? I have a budget. Will you let me do X, Y, and Z? And of course, I welcome the money, of course, but sometimes it just doesn't fit because we're not using the same development team. Because the development teams on a large DXP, it isn't just front end. There's back end, there's DevOps, there's SREs, and hopefully you're not in a situation where you have to worry about databases and things like that. Getting to a point where seeing, what we can do with something else. Like I said, we're a knowledge company. We're always curious. We're always trying to do proof of concepts. And when I was introduced to Webflow, I don't know, it's about a year and a half ago, just testing it out. Like I said, I opened up a personal account, tried it. And then I actually had someone internally in the business that say, look, can you help me get my website onto the platform we're supposed to be on? And I'm like, I don't own the prioritization of the queue. And they were begging me, and I'm like, well, if you're interested, let's look at something differently. And I showed them Webflow, and they're like, well, why don't we just use that? And of course, then we'd had that marketing sprawl, and then we have another dot on that huge slide that we saw earlier, and nobody wants that either. But to go from day 1 to 6 weeks later and moving a website, which is what we did for one of our brands, was lightning, because 6 weeks doesn't even, in corporate world, doesn't even get you past legal or procurement. And that was the real game changer and the eye-opener, like, how did you do this and how did it go so fast? And where's this magical team behind the curtain? And the irony of it is because the software is so intuitive and easy to launch. There actually was really no launch. There was some DevOps work to actually get it up and running. And it was just, easy, quite honestly.
Did not tell him to say that, but that's great. That's great to hear. Yeah. You kind of talked a little bit about this, and was it really that sort of proof of concept that really allowed you to kind of land on Webflow as a tool, or as you were even exploring it on your own, what were some of those other aspects that really made you land on Webflow? And then I'd love to even better understand what some of that migration has looked like to date.
Yeah. Back to I did a quick proof of concept, and then I had some help from the Webflow team, and showed it to my internal client. And one of the things that they were so welcoming about, because it was approachable. With other systems, we had to have a lot of training. Train on the platform, training on the custom code, training on how to do things the right way, and that's only for desktop. And then you have to have the other responsive websites, and we weren't thinking about that. And once I showed my business partner, hey, we can use this, and he was like, hey, can I just have an account and can I play around with it? And of course, we used Webflow University. It's a big shout out for that, because I think that's one of the other big things of a modern technology is not hiding behind some SOW to get the actual manual on how it should work, or hey, why am I Googling and seeing things on Reddit to fix your platform? Just give me the documentation. And having that in front of you that you could find out your answers without having to come back to IT, and realizing just how natural it was. I mean, we did absolutely no training, and people are using the website today and launching new things, but we're still going through the transition. So I'm talking about dummies.com, and this is a large brand. We have 100,000 pages. So the transition from our current platform, which we've skipped the DXP because that's how old of the software is, which was great for what it was built for, but it was built for that purpose, not for, hey, I need to launch video and all these other things they want to do with it, or the new interactions that you can have. It was fairly easy to get the templates and the modules up and running. It took a while to do the migration, because we have so much content. And since we were in WordPress, we were using custom this, plugin that, and a lot of that's embedded inside of your content. And a lot of what we were finding is yes, we can move it over very quickly, and there's like, oh, here's another piece of code or markdown that we have to extract and make sure it isn't there. That's what is taking most of the time.
You're launched, close to launch.
Oh, yeah, we've been launched for a while now. So we started off with homepage and the form, which seems silly, but because we had so much content, we had to make sure we could get it into Webflow CMS correctly. And it's articles, it's books, and then we're collections. Really happy about the nested collections, because from a marketer's point of view, they don't know the hierarchy of your CMS. And they're like, well, this article fits this article and whatever, and they don't care if it's in this category or that category. They want to mix and match it. So that was part of how do we do that? Or the other big thing is because the brand's been around for so long and we have tons of really good SEO, is how do we keep that intact? And that was another, I would say it was a challenge that my architect probably took a couple days and was like, oh, we got this, because we could we're already embedding Next.js in there, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's just like React, except it's server-side rendering. Although, if I could just nerd out just for a second, their React that they're going to put in there will be server-side rendered, because I asked Craig that in the lobby. And then the next piece of it, what we're doing is it has a search. And of course, WordPress out of the box has a search. We had our own custom search in Dummies, but then we were moving to a cross-platform search, because all of our products are the same. You can buy a Dummies book on Wiley.com. You can buy it, wherever, and that's where Wiley comes in, because we don't worry about the channel. Just we want to make sure the knowledge gets out there. But the other big piece of it is how do we leverage our custom search on Wiley.com, which is also going to power Dummies.com, without mixing and matching those pieces. We just want Dummies here and we want everything over here. But it was fairly straightforward on how to actually achieve those things.
Amazing. I feel like urge everyone to think of some questions to ask Brendan in a few minutes. I'm curious, of course, you've been working really closely with our customer success team to really guide this implementation. You've also been able to use one of our incredible, agency partners as well. I would love to sort of even understand that a bit more, but also what are some of the immediate impacts you're seeing by using Webflow? I know it's been kind of under a year of really leveraging the solution internally, but would love to share that.
Yeah, I'll get into the what we did last week, but the other piece of it, Webflow, because it's an event-driven architecture, and the issue that I've seen with moving websites, it's like, okay, here's my product master, and here's the PIM over here, websites over there, and from an operations standpoint, the marketers or the people who run the website, they need to log into yet another tool, another dot on the screen to say, how do I get to do this? Oh, wait, do I have to wait for this cache and move it forward? We were able to leverage the event-based architecture to say, from a marketer, they go into Webflow, they can create their content, they can create their articles, they can do attribution, and that same attribution, which would show up as a filter in our search, will push back into our search, and it'll sync back and forth without the marketer even knowing that. And the same thing, too, is if you want to change something in our search, it'll flow back into Webflow. But the whole point is they have one pane of glass. They log into one area to actually maintain that. So that's been a huge impact because we don't want to have another system and another system to maintain the website. But then the biggest thing that is what our original problem was is speed to market. So like I said, we were able to launch something in 6 weeks. I think the team was ready with the website before we finished our procurement cycle and contract. But most recently, it was last week in Germany, there's the Frankfurt Book Fair, and everybody was like, what can we do to promote this from Wiley? And what happened was the marketer came to us and says, hey, we want to launch something new. We want a splash page, we want a landing page for this event. So within 1 week, they came up with a concept, and then I'll call it 10 days, but let's call it 1 week, just for the sake of argument. We're able to launch something in production. Not only it being pixel perfect, we launched 3 new features. So we had parallax scrolling, we had swipe carousels instead of clicking, and this one seems just kind of like out of the box, which everyone should have. We had video on the website, which the marketing team was investing a lot into, the dummies of how to change a tire or dummies on how to make the perfect cosmopolitan, and they wanted to push that out to the public, and it was able to happen within a week, and minimal to no engineering involvement, which is, to me, that's what modern web development should be.
Amazing, and you were able to work with one of our agency partners, correct?
Yes, if N4 is in the room, thank you. You guys are amazing. Thank you, N4.
Woo!
Yes. They even put somebody in the right time zone for us, ironically. They could work with our team. Thank you for that.
Amazing. Well, Brendan, we're going to start to wrap it up, and then would love to open it up for questions. Kind of zooming back out, the pace of the industry is changing quite quickly. We saw that with the keynote even yesterday. Curious, what has you excited over the next 5 years?
I mean, just getting into no-code solutions. I'm a self-taught engineer, so I taught myself how to write code back in the late 90s, this magical thing called HTML. I'm meeting more and more engineers who don't know how to write code. They're all about no code. They are literally using Copilot or ChatGPT to generate code, but piecing these things together in different no-code applications. And I'm not just talking HTML and JavaScript. They're doing integration. They're actually connecting to AI and getting things. I'm excited about that. And also, of course, just how AI can actually help move things forward, and not just to, write great copy or generate an image, which is absolutely amazing because I can't do any of that, but to enable them to launch new products, enable them to connect that simple things like connect the form into the database, or to recognize that you came to that site before, and we're going to show you something else, which is, I'll put my marketing hat back on. I've been preached for 15 years about we need to get to personalization, and the only way to get there is the data behind it. But if you say to a marketer like, hey, you need to track your sessions, your cookies, or the PII, or how many times they've been to the website, what did they click on, how did they use it, they're like, no, I don't care about that. It's like, did they sign up for the form? And just like get to the basics. But I think AI is going to help with a lot of that. It's going to be not only the bridge, it'll be the enabler. And I can see, not in the too distant future, where creating a website used to be, 2 marketers and like a dozen engineers. And then you fast forward to, I don't know, a couple years ago, it's like a dozen marketers and maybe 1 to 2 engineers. I can see the point where you're going to have a team, a very small team, doing all of it. We were able to launch dummies with 3 full-time engineers, web developers moving content over, and 1.5 marketers. So it was amazing.
The future is now, I guess.
I guess it
Okay.
is, yeah.
Brendan, well, thank you again so much for joining us on stage and sharing some of the lessons you've learned over your career.
Thank you.
Would love to open it up for questions. Got one all the way on that side.
Hi, Brandon. I'm Rachel from Webflow. I was wondering, how do we pitch books? What about Webflow for Dummies?
Yeah, so remember I was talking about the form on dummies.com? There actually is a form you fill out and say, I want to do this. Just fill it out, and someone will get back to you, and and we'll help. We'll help write it.
Okay, there's no friends and family queue that we can skip.
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. Amazing.
Thanks for being such a great advocate for us.
Thank you. I'll help you, by the way.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. A lot of what you talked about underlies some sort of collaboration dysfunction within the organization, making sure that everyone has what they need and the right approvals and the right lead time and queues. And I'm curious lessons you have of how to make maybe turn dysfunction into function between teams, especially at a larger organization, and how you think about acting as an effective team.
Yeah, that's a good question, because some people think collaboration is just like, hey, let's put the 2 people together long enough and they'll work it out, or we'll do some more other kitschy thing like a trust fall, and then they'll trust each other eventually. But really, what you're trying to get to is understanding what each other is saying, and getting back to that whole idea of like, they have an amazing Figma and it's beautiful and they want all this interaction, but if you can explain it to an engineer and they can't actually deliver it, trust erodes little by little. But if you can say, hey, here's the tool and how to do it, and you can give them the keys to the car and let them drive, and then they'll say, okay, that's great, now how do I get to the next gear, or whatever the metaphor might be. And incrementally, that's how you develop that trust, is letting them try it, and eventually it'll happen. But it is if you don't have that trust, it's hard to pull it together. But the way we did it with Dummies was, doing what we were gonna say we were gonna do. We launched it, and we were able to say, hey, we can get you poured over your website, and then the next evolution of that is like, okay, how do we upgrade the brand, and what are we going to do differently with it? And then just allowing them to say, hey, I want to do this, and let them do it, of course, with N4's help. And it was able to achieve, and now that trust is growing more, and they're asking for more features. They want to go to that next gear, and I'm excited to see what the marketers are going to come up with.
I would like to know if you could expand on how the collaboration works with the agency that you worked with. Because you said you tried out Webflow first yourself, but then now there's an agency. Could you explain that?
Yeah. And before I answer that, let me just explain how like an agency would work. And like if we're working with the DXP, it would be the CMO would find an agency they liked. They would come up with the brand boards and everything else, and more time. And then they sign a contract, and then eventually they show it to IT. Like, can you put this in the CMS? And of course, it's like, how soon do you need this? The way this was different was, and since Webflow was new to myself and to Wiley, we asked Webflow, like, do you have an agency partner who's awesome that could help us? And that was literally if I'm starting week 1, we decided, hey, can we do this? Yes. And then literally from when we found and were introduced to N4, and I connected my business partner directly with them, and they described what they wanted. And then right away, because of N4 was already in Webflow, we were actually able to give them access to it, to our instance, which was great that you could do that. And they could see our brands and our styles, our colors, and they were able to iterate very quickly and work directly with the business partner without having to come to IT, which for me is just a dream. And it's because of the tool that they're both working together at the same time and behind the scenes saying, how about this, how about this? And it wasn't like, hey, look at this PDF, or I'm emailing this thing around. It's like, hey, click on this link. Do you like this? Yes or no? Or hey, this is what I'm thinking. And that's where we ended up. And I was, quite honestly, I was surprised by the speed as well, because the things that was presented, I was like, thinking of my other DXP, I'm like, oh, I can't do that in this system. But just seeing it in Webflow that, by the way, is still ADA compliant, still has my cookie consent and my PII. We didn't break our analytics or anything. That was, those are the things that, I'll put my IT hat back on, managing that risk, but I didn't have to worry about that, which is very, very nice and refreshing.
We talk about, at Webflow, there's this sort of three-legged stool. There's Webflow's team that really will help support our customers, via our customer success channel. We have the customer, so in this case, Wiley, and then we have so many incredible agency partners that can work with our customers, and we really seek to work in lockstep across those three teams to ultimately, see success for whatever, project might be in the works.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing.
Hi. Can you share a little bit more about how do you transition from your DXP to the new Webflow environment, and give us some feedback? And what do you miss the most about the old DXP? If there is something.
I think my liver's been, thanking me because I don't have the worry about the old DXP as much. We're still working on that transition. Thankfully, though, the DXP is really, it's static. There's not a lot of dynamic elements in there, which is great. And it's really just managing the content. It's the same header and footer. It's the same JavaScripts behind it. There's the same analytics. There's the same, like I mentioned, the cookie consent, which is huge. We don't actually have a plan as of yet, but just to give you an idea of scale, Dummies is, 80 to 100,000 pages. We're doing that in 6 months, maybe, or less. In 3 years on the DXP, they only have about 22,000 pages. So I'm not worried about how to do that because there's not a lot of interaction in there. One of the things with the DXP that I've learned is do not put your product in there. Don't put your search in there. Keep it to marketing, keep it to static things, because that vendor lock-in is really high on a DXP. And they don't give you the manual like you get with Webflow or other modern tools. So I don't know if that really helped answer your question, because I don't have a plan just yet. But maybe next year I'll be here and I'll tell you about it. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we might have time for one more.
Right here.
You may have just answered it. I was going to ask about the numbers of your scale. How many brands at Wiley do you manage, and then how many CMS collections do you have and such?
Oh boy, a lot. Brand-wise, I think there's probably like a dozen to 12 to 20 brands. The idea is to consolidate to one brand and then have everything path-based. I mean, like I mentioned, we've been on the internet since before the internet, so we have everything has its own domain, has its own brand. I actually don't know the answer to that question. All I know is there's CMSs that I've yet to discover at Wiley that I know as soon as somebody raises their hand or is put in charge of this website or this brand, they're going to want something new. And eventually they make their way to me and to say, like, hey, what can I do? the biggest thing is the Dummies internal partner. He's become almost my mini advocate of saying like, hey, how did you launch that thing so quick? How did you clear this queue or whatever it is they're trying to achieve from a marketing standpoint? And they're like, what's that magic thing? And it really, I mean, the magic is really the collaboration, and then the software enables them. And hopefully I can help other people inside of Wiley do that, because our digital sprawl is big just because we've been around for so long. So sorry I didn't really answer your question, but you can come and talk to me later.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Brendan, so much for being on stage with us. If anyone has any questions after the fact, certainly reach out.
Thank you.